is Tracy Keogh and I'm co-founder of an organisation called Grow Remote. We're a social enterprise on a mission to enable people to work, live and participate locally, and we do that by making remote work both visible and accessible within our local communities. Today I'm here with Rose Barrett, a fellow alumni of University of Limerick, and for the first time I'm going to interview her, something I never thought that we would do. It's great to get the chance to do it, on maybe a little bit about her journey as a co-founder in the organisation Grow Remote, and her career to date. I think of all the people that I know, Rose probably has the most varied of a career and background. So Rose, do you want to start off with your boat driving experience or windsurfing or
any of the above? So much of it started in UL, which is just amazing, and it's amazing the amount of time I spent talking about UL. I went as a mature student in 2006 to do equine science, so obviously a big interest in horses and science, and I really enjoyed the experience, but they planted a seed around marketing and business in there, that has obviously, come on through to the Grow Remote experience. But one of the other really big experiences for me within my time in UL was with clubs and societies. But in first year, the club that caught my attention was the Windsurfers, and I ended up doing 7 years in the club there. And the education I got, and like Tracy's mentioned, I learned how to drive a powerboat, I learned how to drive the minibus, I just got to do so much travel internationally. And I can see that the work that we did with the clubs there has helped us so much in our journey with Grow Remote. Like if I meet anybody I know that's going to UL, it's like, please join clubs and societies. You just don't know what you're going to get from it.
I always wish, I guess, that I had done a little bit more in that regard, because I know it taught you an awful lot about just experiences in organisations and dealing with people and all of that kind of thing. For me, I did economics and finance, and actually maybe if you take the two sides of those, between your experience in clubs and socks and that more human side of it, and my experience in economics and finance, Grow Remote as an organisation, we take kind of a first principles approach to community development. So we, as I said, we kind of want people to be able to work, live and participate locally. We're more interested in the living and participating, but in order to get there, we need to plug in employment locally, and that's how we can generate income to get into and to circulate around our local communities. But we actually wouldn't be able to do the work that we do if we didn't have a thriving community to activate it, I guess is the best way to phrase it. And Rose is the person that looks after that. To touch on, I guess, moving away from how we got to Grow Remote and onto what we do you want to explain a little bit about remote working, where it's at now, how you see communities benefiting from that maybe, and maybe where the future might look like? You might touch on co-working spaces then.
Yeah. So obviously it's 2020 and it's been such a strange year and things have moved so much. So, one of the things we've been talking about is in February, we kind of felt a little bit like maybe we were shouting into the void. There was definitely people paying attention to us, but wider, if you mention remote work and people are like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. And then fast forward a month and a half and suddenly everybody knows at least something about remote working. It's in their language. It's something that they're aware of. The focus for us over the summer became about training people in the skill of remote. So Tracy have been working heavily with Laois Offaly to be since last year. Really progressive team there. And basically once the pandemic hit, there was obviously a great appetite to get people upskilled. That's one thing that we've been hearing from employers, that people just maybe were missing some of the key skills. And if we want to make sure that our workforce are really healthy and able to move with this new future of work, that this is what we needed for it. And for us as well as a team, we're kind of coming out of that period where, that's kind of in place and it's working away, and we need to get back to our community. So chapters are a real core what Grow Remote is about. So when Grow Remote started just a little over 2 years ago, the idea came about was like, how do we spread this to as many communities as possible? And chapters came around, and the suggestion was to host it on a platform called ChangeX. So what we use that for then is everything we've learned about remote, we put in a box and we share out to them. There's still an element from pre-COVID where, there is a certain amount of education that needs to happen. Again, people are more aware of remote, but they maybe not know the realities of it and what it's going to be like, you know, working day to day. What courses should they be doing? What skills do they need to be picking up that they can actually go out and get a remote job? One of the initiatives we've put in place is a jobs club, so we can actually help people on that journey, and that they have somebody to come to ask questions about, like, what should they be doing for their LinkedIn and when they're searching things. Another area that we've noticed is that there's more companies looking at the hybrid version of remote. So remote can be done in lots of different flavors. Some companies, it's 100% distributed, so it's all the team are remote. They have been doing it, you know, for years, and everything's in place already. But for a lot of companies that had to go remote, that were suddenly remote over the pandemic, it's a matter of, you know, it might be where some of the team are going back into the office, some are remote, and it's a bit harder to do that. So I think that one of the areas that us as an organisation, our communities, everybody else that wants to make sure we have a healthy ecosystem around remote working in Ireland, can ensure that we're supporting people, individuals and companies around that hybrid version of remote. And then the benefits, okay, so many people have had to be working remotely this year because of the situation we find ourselves in, but there's that reduced commute, more time to volunteer in your local community. Like, one of the things we'll talk about is, you know, you have time suddenly to go and train the under 12s that you mightn't have before, or you're able to pick up the kids from school and you drop them and pick them up. There's all those pieces. There's environmental benefits, there's life quality, there's access to roles, there's sharing of knowledge within communities, there's people again becoming more active citizens, and on and on and on and on. And I just think it's really powerful. Like, for you, Tracy, like, what's the stuff that you're very, very excited about coming into next year?
Well, just for the practical stuff and what you just said there, on workplace analytics in terms of the benefits of remote working for companies, when you get back into commercials, hard commercials, on global workplace analytics /ROI, I will share the link, hopefully maybe through this. You can get a calculator for how much you can save in terms of perhaps going remote. And that idea of hybrid is probably where we're seeing companies going. So we're working with about 15 companies who are on the transition to remote. And we say hybrid, even notice there, and you said it, Rose, that some will be in the office and some will be remote. And you'd wonder, how come you're not remote when you're in the office? In terms of, it depends maybe where your leadership is. Like, is your leadership in the office, is it also distributed? The future is looking, probably from what we can see, like fundamental choice. So there's an Irish company called Teamwork, and there's also an Irish company called the Web Summit, who changed their hiring this year from being city-based when they were advertising the careers. And that's what's really important to us in terms of the visibility and accessibility of employment anywhere. When they were advertising their careers, that they're now available remotely anywhere within the Republic of Ireland. And that means that you might go to the office, which would be their headquarters in Dublin or Cork, and Teamwork, for example, has a slide in the office, so you would have a slide between two floors. It's really cool. You might want to go there, but equally you might go to an office, which is not the office, but it could be one of the 800 co-working spaces that are being built across Ireland. Built and being built. There are about 800 now as of today, or it might be your home, and it might be a range of those things. And I think one of the most important things that we've gotten through in the last while is an understanding of what remote is, and that idea that people often associate remote work with anything that happened outside of a city centre, particularly in Ireland, Dublin, whereas remote working is distributed. It can happen anywhere, right? And so one of the first examples of where that really hit home to me is when we opened up a chapter in Dublin. And I was like, we were starting off in rural and region in Ireland. But I met a lady named Orna, and I got speaking to her, and she was a single mother in Dublin. And her kids were old enough that she could work in the house and leave them occupy themselves, but not old enough that she was comfortable to leave the house and let them be, have the house themselves. And so for her, being able to work from home and remote work was just as impactful as it would be to somebody having a career opportunity in the middle of Armagh and Donegal. So remote work, no matter where it is, really does have the power to transform how our economies work. And it's really important that we take that down from that broad narrative that often gets talked about, it's cool, could be cool, into actionable things to do for companies, for individuals, and for communities as a group. So I think that's maybe as of where we've got in today. Rose, I don't know, we have been a little bit on the line now. Anything, I was going to say anything that you would have done differently in college, because I think I'd have loads of things. But anything, I guess, yeah, that maybe you would have done differently, or that you would have valued more.
I did things differently, Tracy. We might not be here today. Mightn't have met you, mightn't have done the weekend stuff.
Okay. Okay. But okay, so maybe for me then, I know I went back to Rose talked about the impact on the main street, and that's kind of cool, because you kind of think, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I'm not sure we have real stats behind that. And one of the things that I would love to kind of figure out now is how many, say there's 3 people earning a salary now of 50,000 who are working in Roscommon because they found a remote job. What's the kind of ratio of there's 3 people employed to the shop being able to stay open, or to a new shop opening, or to a cafe opening, or, you know, can we actually just see the maths behind that? And so if I could do my college time again, I would just study more. That's what I would do. And I went back to the Chem Music School recently, and I was like, oh my God, let me in there. Like, I would love to get access to all these resources now. So that's what I would do, yeah. And I would
I think if I was to go back, I'd love to do economics.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, which I didn't know back then.
Okay, well, Rose, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for all the work that you did in Grow Remote voluntarily.
Thank you for starting it all.
That is us.
If anybody's interested, we host a virtual coffee every Tuesday at 3 o'clock. You'll find the link to join our Slack on growremote.ie, and it is just a chance to pop in and have their beautifully random conversations. Sometimes they're quite professional development, and sometimes we talk about taking horses to France. It's very hard to say.